Hey everyone, I'm going to do a video on how to change your reality if there's something you don't like. So first of all, we have to understand that we create our reality through our perception. And in that perception, there are 5 main programs that are running us. That is something that you can verify yourself if you observe your behavior very closely. How do you observe your behavior? You have to be able to be still, and to, when you get triggered or you see a drive to do something or a drive to move away from something, if you watch it very closely, you will see that there are these 5 programs. They work like hamster wheels. I call them hamster wheels. That's something I've developed as my own system for seeing them, which facilitates your ability to see these patterns. The hamster wheels are created with 2 opposing words. So, for instance, I'm going to be talking about paying attention to, and the opposite to that is ignore. There's 4 other hamster wheels. There's quite a few things, a few rules to the playbook, which by we create our reality, in that this wheel has to balance. Okay, so that's the, if you look at the Taoist principles, that everything finds balance. The more you force something, the more you get the opposite. Buddha found that as well. The more you go for the I always forget the nadir, the more you get the opposite. It'll come to me. When you set up a thing and then you forget, that's just what happened. The zenith and the nadir. So the more you go for the zenith, the more you get the nadir. So these are sort of first principles. If you look very closely, this is how the mind works. And the mind creates your reality via your behaviors. And so I'm going to be talking about paying attention to ignore, and how this particular one can sort of create a reality where you become quite insular and limited in your... You become, maybe you're an introvert and you don't like to try new things, or maybe you're a bit fearful. And I'm going to be talking about, in particular, intuition. So let's get to it. So intuition, it's a little bit, goes against the mainstream thought, but, everyone says, listen to your intuition. Now, if you spend the time and you observe intuition, I think you will find that it's part of your mental framework of hamster wheels. So I was talking to someone this morning about intuition, and they were saying they're in a sort of negotiation for some business, and I'm listening in the background to the underlying pattern, but he's telling me exactly what's happening in the negotiation. And the gist I get is, he's paying attention to them, he's showing them respect, he's asking them to pay attention to him. He said, I want this, please let me know by this time because it's really important to me. So he wants them to pay attention to him, but they're not paying attention to him. So they're sort of ignoring him. So this is a very intelligent guy and lovely, mild-mannered person. But with a little bit of digging, I get to the anger. So there's anger in him that he's expecting to be paid attention to, but he feels violated by this, that they're not caring for him, paying him attention. So the deep hamster wheel is paying attention to ignore. And so, you could see this play out on a bigger, more simple scale. People, narcissists want to be paid attention to because deep down they were probably ignored when they were children. Yeah. A lot of introverts don't like being paid attention to, in fact feel safer being ignored, but they don't want to be ignored. So they kind of try and get paid attention to by being kind and supporting others and paying attention to others, but they get ignored. So when I was listening to this guy, what I realized was it was kind of like a boundary issue. So in a relationship, you want to be paid attention to, not overly, not negatively, and you don't want to be ignored, and you don't want to ignore them. Okay, so it's like a relationship dynamic in reality, and those 2 words come up and they create your reality living through them. So if you're jammed up on the right, you will pay attention to yourself, you will want attention paid to you. If you're jammed up on the left, you will want paid attention to, but you feel uncomfortable and you end up getting ignored a lot. The people on the right will get ignored at some point when the wheel balances. Yeah, people on the left sort of they're good at balancing it themselves. Bear with me, I'm kind of going into a little bit of depth there, but if we come back to this guy who was talking to me, he was like, what should I do? And so fundamentally what I said was the hamster wheel is in charge of you. You're very nice, you're paying attention to them, you expect to be paid attention to, but you feel violated. You're angry. And he said, yeah, it's not right. And he said something like, they're playing with my feet, like an expression. They're pissing me about. They're not respecting me, paying attention to. Okay, respect is sort of sitting on top of paying attention to, this childlike pattern. We can get a little bit more complicated with the words, but it's coming back to a 4-year-old child program, hamster wheel. So he said, you could see that. So what will happen with someone like this is they will be very quick to anger. So he will be very respectful and kind, and then when they don't respect his boundaries, he puts his boundary in too hard and gets angry. So I think I can relate to that, and I'm sure many of you listening to can relate to putting in a boundary too hard. You just get pissed and you get angry. So I told him he needs to look at some principles of assertiveness. Assertiveness means that you are able to put boundaries on what your needs are. Many people can't. Most can't. So then he said the word intuition. He said, yeah, but my intuition is kind of telling me that this is the wrong job. Now, what I said to him is that intuition, that framework's been there since he's a little boy and created his reality. So the frameworks of these hamster wheels create your reality. So what you have now is based on your hamster wheels. If you want to change your reality, you have to look at the hamster wheels that are controlling you. So his intuition is triggered that there's something dangerous coming, or they're not trustworthy. But the trust is coming from deep down. He doesn't trust himself to put in the boundaries, and the hamster wheel's taking over. So I said to him, your intuition is firing up because, and it's true, sometimes intuition, there's a weird thing that happens where you pick up on something that the information's not available to you. Intuition is there is such a thing, I think. But the hamster wheel is more likely, your old programming. So he was saying, I think I'm just going to move away from this situation. Again, keeping him limited in his normal framework for his life. I said, wait. I said, you're nervous about going into this area because you have no boundaries. Now, if you were, let's use an example of a black belt in jiu-jitsu, fighter, unbelievable fighter, and you were in a kind of in an area going into different areas on, let's say, Madeira, this island, and there were some really dangerous areas. If you had no skills, you would stick to where you feel safe. But if you were a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you go anywhere. You wouldn't care because your boundaries are there. Like if someone grabbed you, you have boundaries. So fighting and jiu-jitsu are boundaries, black belt and boundaries. You put a boundary on someone, they try and do something to you, you put a boundary on it. You could take them down very gently, you can choke them, there's a boundary there. Yeah, they can try and get a hold of you, but you put a boundary on. Which means because you're sure of your boundary skill, you can go wherever you want. And I said to this guy, your boundary skill, you have none. So you're in a childlike boundary setup where you're using what you've always done, which is being nice, and you're expecting them to do the same. They're violating that. So now you're going to move away. And that creates, all your relationships are based on sort of this, and you will have nice people around you who respect your boundaries, but it's going to limit you, especially in business. You might be saying, yeah, but it sounds like they're assholes. Well, sometimes people, they have no idea of their own behaviors, and they expect you to put your own boundaries in. So you have to take responsibility for your boundaries. So I told him to read this book. I feel guilty when I say no. An old book, very good book, I recommend it. And he's going to go away and study that. And what I'm doing there is he's going away and learning jiu-jitsu for his mouth. So he can put boundaries in place in relationships. So you become a black belt. Using the hamster wheels, you can see that he's going to pay attention to himself now. He's no longer expecting them to pay attention to him. So it's boundaries. They can't ignore his boundaries. So when your hamster wheels are balanced, so you're not always trying to get paid attention to, or you don't care if you get ignored. You don't ignore yourself, you pay yourself attention, it balances out, you get your needs met. And through that, then you start to live differently, and then you start to attract many different types of relationships. Why? Because you're not fearful based off a 4-year-old's sort of trauma-based program. Yeah? So, I think I covered everything. So coming back to this idea of intuition, I've spent 30 years in this area. Intuition, our physical intelligence picks up on information. I think intuition is very much to do with the physical picking up of information outside of us. The hamster wheel and our mental models, our hamster wheels, they control our reality, and they are based off of programming from when we were very young and when we had a disconnect and we didn't get our needs met. So they're defense systems, and they're overly zealous. And what they're doing is they're constantly monitoring. When you watch very closely, they're always firing. And they control your reality. But unfortunately, you start to live a 4-year-old's life, and it becomes secondhand and it becomes mechanical. It's just like you start going, through these loops. My life is just one big cycle. I try and do this, and then I get bored of it. Or I try and lose weight, and then I get bored of it. Or I try and become successful in business, and then I self-sabotage. So if you watch closely, there are these cycles, and it is a game. There is a playbook. The playbook is based on being able to see the hamster wheels that control the game. When you do that, it's almost like a cheat mode. So if you'd like to know more, of course, you can follow me. I'm finishing up my book. It's taking a little bit longer, but I'm going to be explaining that. I'm going to be doing a course as well that I'll give away probably for free, open source playbook for this. If you'd like to understand this better, you can always book a session with me. I love doing them. I love spending an hour showing people one of the hamster wheels, and they're absolutely blown away by it, and very quickly then they can start changing their reality. If you look at something like the law of attraction, what they're doing is they're hooking you. It's a scam. They're hooking you on your hamster wheel. They're saying you can control and gain and create your reality if you just imagine it. That's using your hamster wheel. The more you try and gain, the more you will lose. That's a mental centralized control system, and it will just trap you. Anyone who starts talking about you create your own, you can control your own reality by thinking nice thoughts, that is nonsense. It is as simple as observing your own behavior, but there's no trying to gain. It sounds very nice, but it's just going to pull you in and reinforce your hamster wheels. And I've been helping people escape those hamster wheels for many years now, and especially the law of attraction. That one made people a lot of money, but the more you put energy into gaining, the more you're going to lose. So if you want to know more about these hamster wheels, just leave a comment. I'd love it if you could share this and like it. Help me get this information out there, because this playbook will help many people, especially those that are struggling with addictions, mental health issues, or who are just simply very disconnected and no longer enjoy life, because this playbook is the game that everyone's playing. All right, thanks so much. Have a great day.